There are a lot of stands in JoJo that I would like to talk about, but they wouldn't really work for the series standoff where we pit two stand users up against each other. Because not every stand's primary ability is for combat, although any stand can be used as a weapon if the user is creative enough. And the stands in the series with non-lethal abilities tend to be some of my favorites, so today let's completely rip off the series that just works for Medi and talk about one of my favorite stands in all of JoJo, Superfly.
The only game you know is do or die. Superfly.
So Superfly is a really interesting stand. First off, it does not have its own appearance, and it is only seen as a telephone tower because that is the object that the stand is bound to. But usually stands that can possess objects have their own individual appearance, such as Ebony Devil, but it is assumed that Superfly has no appearance at all, and after its user became a stand user, the tower simply turned into a stand, but still retained its telephone tower appearance that can be seen by non-stand users. Back onto Superfly's stand user, Toyohiro Kanedaichi, or rather the alias the stand user went under, as he claims he gave a fake name and he was also wearing a mask during his entire arc to hide his appearance. So Toyohiro, as I will refer to him, purchased an abandoned transmission tower 3 years ago from his first appearance and has been living an isolated and self-sufficient lifestyle, growing herbs for medicine and food around the tower and also fishing from inside the tower, bringing the fish up to him for food. He also has other household items inside the tower such as cooking supplies, furniture, and even a television. But as we come to find out, Toyohiro is actually trapped within his own stand Superfly and has been forced to live within the tower. The history of the stand is never elaborated on, but what we did have explained, we can easily come to a conclusion on how Superfly came to be. So Toyo wasn't lying when he said he bought the tower and lived in it for 3 years. It was all true. When he first started living in the tower, it wasn't a stand yet, and he clearly was able to leave the tower to move in all of his belongings, such as his furniture and television. It was his choice to live in the tower until he became a stand user. He says he likes living in the tower and is scared of the outside world and all of the other people. So while Toyo was living in the tower, he was either stabbed by the arrow, which is most likely what happened, or he became a stand user for unknown reasons, and then because the tower was such a big part of his life and pretty much his life revolved around the tower became his stand Superfly. Toyohiro is just such a damn cool stand user. I really like the idea of you being a master of your own territory, and once someone steps into your environment, it's pretty much game over because you have so much knowledge of everything around you. As we saw, Toyohiro has scars all over his body, and even though he has no control over Superfly at all, he still uses that to the best of his ability, and I feel like he just practices all day, throwing stuff at Superfly, damaging it, seeing the patterns in the way that Superfly reacts to taking damage, and thus this would lead to him getting hurt a couple times. But in the end, he ends up mastering the stand and is able to use it perfectly to combat people once they step into Superfly. So I really like that idea, not being able to control your stand, but being able to exploit the way that it works. And also just kind of the trickery character that he is, always having something up his sleeve and never really being completely honest, is just something interesting. So now on to Superfly itself. It is a completely independent stand that the user does not have any control over, but like I said, its user can exploit some of the abilities and use it in its favor, and it's also seen that Superfly will work at times to help Toyo, sort of in his favor, like when he fell and a screw unbolted and shot across, giving him a platform to step on. So it seems that Superfly is conscious in a sense and will help out whoever is currently inside Superfly. So the stand's main ability is its trapping effect. Once someone steps into Superfly, they cannot leave unless another person enters, passing the effect onto them, enabling the first person to leave the stand. They make the analogy in the manga that it's sort of like playing a game of Old Maid, if you guys know what that is. If you don't, watch Death Parade. So if you attempt to leave the stand without having the prerequisite of another person entering, you will begin to turn into metal, whichever body part is leaving. So if you stuck your arm out of Superfly, your arm would turn into metal, but you would still have the ability to retract it. So it is assumed if you were to fully leave Superfly that you would be turned into metal and stay that way for as long as Superfly existed, or you would just be absorbed into Superfly and become a part of the stand. While we're talking about Superfly's existence, it should be noted that if the user dies, then Superfly will continue to exist similar to the stand Anubis. So considering the immense defensive capabilities that this stand has, it will probably be around as long as the Earth exists. And who knows, maybe even longer than that. So back onto the trapping effect, there are some exceptions to the trapping effect, such as animals and ghosts. As we saw when not Superfly, but Toyo was fishing and he brought the fish into the stand. Obviously that does not count, and he can't just bring animals in and then himself leave, and then the fish would be trapped in Superfly. It has to be people, and it's not specified, but it seems to be only stand users because we never saw just a regular person enter the stand. And when I mentioned ghost, because Yoshihiro, Kira's dad, is a ghost, and he was not affected by Superfly either. I'm just going to assume that was because he's a ghost, but I would also assume that maybe only stand users can be affected by Superfly, but I'm not sure about that. But who knows, it could just be anyone. Okay, so Superfly's secondary ability is its damage reversal. This allows the stand to absorb any damage taken, and then after a little bit of time, it will fire it back while simultaneously repairing itself, making it almost an indestructible stand. But if part of Superfly is severed, like we saw when Toyo cut the rope off, and he thought it was part of Mikitaka, and Mikitaka was like, no, that's actually part of your stand. That did not connect back together. So if things are severed, they won't go back together because eventually Crazy Diamond did fix that. So, but it did deflect the damage, and that's how Mikitaka initially got injured. It kind of shot back into his chest. And also, if any stand will physically attack Superfly, like we saw the hand and also Crazy Diamond punching Superfly, it will spit back a reanimated version of those stands. In the anime, it was portrayed to be kind of like grayed out, colorless versions of the stands, but it will have the exact same amount of power as whatever stand punches it. So that is the stand Superfly explained. It's pretty simple. To simplify everything about it, it's an independent stand that traps people inside and deflects damage. Its stand stats, it has an E in every single category except for range and durability. Durability is obviously an A, and its range is non-applicable, but technically the range is pretty much just the area of Superfly, so pretty much anything underneath it and inside it. Also, if anyone was wondering if stand ownership transfers between the people trapped in Superfly, this is not the case. Toyohiro will always be Superfly's stand user, even if he dies and even if he leaves Superfly, because he is able to still see stands even leaving it, and also when Josuke was inside Superfly alone. And there's also another rule that no stand user can have more than one stand at a time, and that would mean that Josuke would have the stand Superfly and also Crazy Diamond because he was using Crazy Diamond while inside Superfly while Toyohiro was gone. So no, ownership does not transfer. So that was Superfly explained. If you guys want me to do more of these explanation videos with just one individual stand, please try to request stands that are sort of not focused on combat, because my standoff series is where I take two stands and pit them against each other, and I kind of really break down and explain their abilities pretty well. So leave this series more focused around stands that really don't have anyone good to compare them to, such as a stand like Superfly like we did today. I plan on doing other stands like Burning Down the House, Sugar Mountain Sprint, so that just gives you guys a reference point on what sort of stands to request for this series. So thank you guys for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Drop a like if I fought your boredom for a little bit, and also subscribe for more videos.